Welcome back to the SwitchedOn podcast. Dan here with today's signals around inspiring people to tap into their greatness. With me is Barbara Daoust, an author, coach, and more. A great quote from Barbara in the episode. We go into autopilot. That's when we are burying our potential. Come join us and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Today we have Barbara Daoust with us. Barbara is an acclaimed success coach, author, and inspirational speaker. Welcome, Barbara. I'm excited to have you on the show and looking forward to diving in and having you give us a little bit more about your background to start.
Well, thank you for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure. Want me to share? I've got a long history.
Okay. Well, give us a synopsis of that. Yeah,
I've been living long enough to say that. So, but, essentially, as a success coach and author and speaker now, the last 10 years has been, focused on that part. But I did spend 30 years in the entertainment industry. So I was a director. I have my master's in directing, as well as I was an acting coach, had an acting academy. And I also worked with a lot of celebrity children on sets, on TV sets and film.
Wow.
And it was not until 2 months before my 25th wedding anniversary that I lost my husband to fourth stage cancer, and he was gone in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And it was so devastating to me because we had we had a theater company that we formed together in San Francisco. He was, building sets here in Los Angeles where, I now live. And it was a total surprise, just, totally unexpected. And, I'll talk more about it today, but there are two ways that we change. And one of the ways is through a traumatic event. And it's a change that I wasn't expecting, and a change that capsized my world as I knew it. And as a result of that, I really went on a journey to find out, why was it so complicated to change? And it was that journey that led me to where I am today. And the other way that we change is through constant spaced repetition of a new idea that we establish, embed, implant, and just repeat, imprint on the subconscious mind over and over and over again until it becomes a part of our mechanism, until it becomes part of our electromagnetic field on a deeper emotional level. And then we finally accept it as the truth, which then creates a new belief, which then starts to create new behavior, which then starts to create a new you. So I've studied neuroscience for about 8 years now. I work with a cardiologist on brainwave entrainment as well, because I could not just accept spiritual laws, which is what I teach,
right, and
business concepts without understanding the science. So I'm that person who has to know, how a nano and a quark works in order for us to create what, our results are in life.
Yeah.
So I've, really been on that journey of asking that question, what happened to me? Why did it happen to me? And why is change so complicated? And I also, after the loss of my husband, within a year, I found my mother-in-law dead. My father died, my best friend died, and my brother-in-law died jumping out of a plane, and his parachute didn't open.
My goodness.
So I was really smacked upside the head. It was like there was something I wasn't getting.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting. And it took quite some time to, process through that grief and loss and change. And it was through the influence of others, that I ended up in a spiritual psychology program. It was a master's program here in Los Angeles. And I had no intention of coaching. I just wanted to heal. And then I certified in a law of attraction quantum success program. And again, that wasn't to become a coach. It was to heal myself. And then I wrote a book called True Love, True Self, A Journey to Self-Love. And again, no intention of coaching. It's just that in order to certify, I had to start working with people. And when I started using and teaching what I needed to know, and started practicing for myself what I was teaching others, I was really, really good in my past at helping a whole lot of people have success, but I wasn't doing it for myself.
Yeah.
And then once I started to learn, how to walk my talk, essentially, right? Then, and seeing the results that other people were having and knowing that, I could do it for myself as well. That's when I met Bob Proctor in 2013 and really put the pieces together about combining business, mindset, and spirituality, and the three planes of our personality, which I'll talk more about. And as a result of working with him and the program called Thinking into Results, which is what I do for many of my clients, I doubled my practice and tripled my income in less than a year. So I took a quantum leap, and now I show people how to quantum leap their businesses. So it's not 1%, 3% growth, but we're talking 150 to 500% and more, once you start to tap into the unlimited mindset.
Yeah. You said so many things in the intro there that were the reasons why I was really excited to meet you and spend some time with you, because the journey that I've gone through myself is so similar in many ways. And one of the things that you said there that was I learned for me was getting to the essence of energy and really diving into the energy side of it. I've continued to be able to find kind of like a baseline there that allows me to experience more spiritually as I understand the connections and the energy dynamics. And so it's really fun to hear you talk from that angle, because it's one that I've really connected some of those dots as well. When
Yeah, well, let me just address that quickly, because we're
Sure.
all vibrational beings, right? We're all energy, and everything around us is energy. And energy can't be created or destroyed. Energy is, and we've been on the model of Newtonian physics for such a long time. But with Newtonian physics, it's all about the material world. It's all about seeing, the evidence, right? Using our five physical senses versus, what we're looking at now in quantum mechanics and epigenetics is the concept of energy, and energy is invisible.
Right.
So they haven't put that into the equation since the 1600s. So yes, they've looked at the body as a machine, in terms of mechanics, but we change. Machines don't change. They deteriorate with age,
Yeah.
but, as human beings, as an energy field, and our electromagnetic energy field has more power in it than a computer or a radio tower. So, the energy that's moving and coursing through our bodies, we haven't been taught that the invisible side of success, is where the magic is.
Yeah. The man, wow, you are getting into things that I absolutely love to talk about and don't typically, get that much opportunity, because one of the courses I went and leaned on from my undergrad was a course I loved, which was thermodynamics. And thermodynamic is this, the net energy in the universe is constant, just as you said, the energy is the energy. And the second law of thermo is every time you convert energy from one form to another, there's disorder or entropy created. And when I started recrafting my food and my nourishment of my body, I literally went to thermodynamics and I said, okay, I can create positive potential energy, law 1, or I can create entropy and disorder, law 2. And by putting something into my machine, if it's not good stuff, it creates disorder and entropy, which leads to disease eventually.
Right.
Or I can put in stuff that creates positive potential, just as love does and other things. And really relied on that base level of energy dynamics, the thermo equation, and it guided me. And I continue to use it today in virtually everything I evaluate. But really, really fun to hear you talk about
Yeah.
that.
Well, and just to break it down even simply, in the study of epigenetics, right? They're showing more and more that disease is really only caused by 1% of our DNA.
Yeah.
So the question is, what's the rest of it caused by, right? So we know that stress creates about 75% of chronic disease. And it's all about signals, and it's in our inputs. What are the signals that we're inputting? So in the study of epigenetics, it's really about what are the thoughts you're thinking, and are you putting in toxic thoughts, or are you putting in nutrients, helpful, positive thoughts? Are you hanging out with people who are negative, negative Nellies, David Downers, and are you in an environment that's caustic, toxic? And are you also eating foods that are, again, toxic foods, right? So when you put all of those signals together, it's the inputs that are really creating the dis-ease or the disintegration.
Yeah. No, fantastic. Well, one of the things that we had talked about in the pre-show that I really liked that you had brought up, which was inspiring people to tap into their greatness, time to wake up. And really want to hear you articulate a little bit about that statement.
Well, thank you for that question, because I was talking with somebody the other day who said, can you elaborate on wake up? Because most people don't even know what that means. Some people will call it a midlife crisis even. But what I've perceived and have come to understand is that, the majority of our lives, until we really wake up to our true sense, or our true essence, our true self. And in my book, I call it a journey to self-love. I didn't even know that I didn't know how to love myself until I lost my husband. It was kind of like I lost the love of my life to find out I didn't know how to love myself, because I was so codependent on him, giving me my value. And so the very first part of our lives, I believe that we're living a core identity. And that core identity is really seeking approval outside of ourselves, because we formed our belief systems from our birth to around the age of 7. We're already programmed, we're already patterned. And those beliefs are somebody else's beliefs. We're just adopting, because once I started to really understand the function of the mind, and understanding that 95%, and neuroscience is showing this today, that 95% of our behavior is controlled by the subconscious mind. And so the other 5% is our conscious mind, our logical mind. And most people think that their logical mind is really where they get to make decisions, but then they end up doing things and saying, that's not what I wanted to do. Why did I do that? Why? And I did it again. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? And that's part of the autopilot mechanism in our in our bodies and our brains. And it's really important to understand the difference between the brain and the mind, right? And the different mechanisms that are controlling our behavior. Yeah. And if we've adopted, we come into this world looking like our, grandparents and generations before us. So we're already programmed. Our DNA, the way we look, and then even, why first generation welfare becomes second generation welfare, becomes third generation welfare. It's all a part of the so-called paradigm. And the paradigm is where we get stuck on fixed ideas and beliefs. And they're, we're just little sponges, between birth and the age of 7. We don't have the ability to rationalize. So we're just accepting everything, and especially anything that's repeated over and over and over again to us. For example, you won't be successful unless you go to college. You'll never amount to anything unless you have a college degree. Right. You can't become somebody unless you're a PhD. And so if you hear that over and over and over again, every decision you make in life is going to be based on moving toward that PhD. And so it's always seeking approval outside of yourself without really, having focus on what is it that you really, really want.
Yeah.
And one day, let's say midlife, you wake up and go, is this my life? Is this what it's amounted to? Is this who I am? Is this what I really want? Yeah. Is this all there is? And the good news is that that's the beginning of, and you can have that kind of wake up call. It doesn't have to be midlife. You can have that sooner too. I know of 25-year-olds who wake up one day out of an alcoholic stupor and say, is this my life? And when you start probing and asking those questions, it becomes, well, what else is there? And the good news is that, we're never, the best is always yet to come. We're never too old to stop dreaming.
Yeah.
And most people stop dreaming. So it's become my passion to help people continue living into the spirit of life, living into the spirit of growth, living into the spirit of, being expressed. And then I call that's the core identity that starts to emerge, right? Where you stop looking at, seeking approval outside of yourself. And as you've shared with me, you start to go within and start to love yourself. And from that place, you can start serving not only yourself, but others at a much more expansive, conscious, compassionate level.
Yeah. I just wrote down a quote you said there, but living into the spirit of growth is one of these amazing, eye openers I had. And this goes back to when I graduated my undergrad. I'll never forget, a statement I said to my parents, which was not a good statement, but I told them, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I'm done learning. I'm just tired. I want to get out and make money. I'm tired of studying. I'm just done with this whole thing." And I look back on it now and I'm like, oh my God, my learning hadn't even started.
Right.
And here I was in this mindset that I was done.
Yeah.
And, so I think living into this spirit of growth is, if I were to put one thing for myself over the last 7 years, is the greatest adventure I'm on now is every signal that I get, I question it and I go on a growth adventure with it. And it's become like this, it's so much fun to follow the bouncing ball of the trail of some of these things materialize. And it really is living to the spirit of growth. So I love that quote. I'm probably going to use that as the title of the episode.
I said spirit of life, but I do like that spirit of growth, because the spirit of life, for me, and the spirit of growth is essential as well, because if we're not growing, we're disintegrating.
Yeah.
We're either moving, towards something or we're moving away from something.
Right.
And so the more that we don't get expressed and we start suppressing the spirit of growth, and where I look at it as the spirit of life, I pull that into just like every single moment. Are you writing a letter to somebody or an email to somebody within the spirit of life?
Yeah.
So that it's opening up potential. And an example for me, when I really got that idea, I went on a vacation and I came home and a neighbor had planted a morning glory. And I don't know if you know that morning glories, the plant, they're like weeds and they can take over trees and they kill everything along the way. They're so powerful. And my gardener said, watch out, that plant is just going to take over your trees. And I came back and it was just a week, and I went into my restroom and I opened up one of my little cupboards connected to the floor, the base, and out popped this morning glory. And it was a lime green. All the colors were like not, normal, so-called. And I discovered that this morning glory had gone underneath my house. I have like a 3-foot
this crawl space,
and it wrapped itself around all the electrical wires and found a crack in the cupboard in my bathroom and found the light. It found the light, so that when I opened up my cupboard, it was like this plant that jumped out. And I was like, now that's the spirit of life.
Yeah.
It's constantly seeking expansion and constantly moving toward the light.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's going to be buried, And so when we go into autopilot, that's when we are burying our potential.
Yeah. I lived far too many years on autopilot as I look, backwards. And it's stunning to me how it kind of happens. It wasn't intentional, but as the chaos of life swarms you, I think, it just feels like you start shutting down all those things because you're just trying to survive in amongst the chaos. But yeah, that's really interesting about the plant and seeking the light, because
Yeah.
the light is
Well, and the thing about autopilot, here's where we distinguish the difference, between the mind and the brain, because the brain wants the path to least resistance. So because of the neurons, and we want to learn and we want to grow and we want to be comfortable. That's what we're always seeking. We're always seeking comfort,
yeah,
right? And so what happens is that autopilot is essential because the brain wants the path of least resistance. So we don't want to have to think about our hands moving and the blood and the veins moving through the veins and our muscles to open up our front door. We want to be able to just know that we can walk through or open up the door. We want to be able to know that we can ride a car, drive it, without having to think about the fingers, the white lines, and having to think so hard. It takes up a lot of energy to think. So the brain wants to conserve energy, and that's why it goes on autopilot. It goes to the path of least resistance. The thing to recognize, though, is that when we're constantly growing, we're creating new neurons and new neural pathways, and we're stimulating the brain, and we're stimulating growth. We're stimulating neuropeptides. We're stimulating hormones that keep us, in the spirit of life, And so to watch out for when we're creating results we don't want, that's when the rut is stuck in the neural pathway. It's kind of like the grooves that just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's when it's the opportunity to really think, dive deep, and start questioning why you're not changing.
Yeah.
We don't like change.
No.
We want the familiar, right?
Yeah.
As we know, if you're going to have an Olympic mindset, it's really about doing things and stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching, until it becomes part of you, right? And then you're in the knowing, and you're not in, the having to practice anymore even. It's just you've become consciously competent.
Yeah. When we start talking there, you have a statement that I'd written down about the 3 planes of understanding: the intellectual, the spiritual, and the physical. How does that meld into this?
So basically, on the spiritual level, energy is constantly moving to and through us. And spirit is forever seeking fuller expression and expansion, and this is consciousness. So the people we hang out with, the experiences that we have, being aware of, our patterns and behaviors through, observation. So that's on the spiritual level, and so we're receiving information. And our signals and inputs, right? The intellectual level is like the mind, and the capacity that we have on the conscious level is to be able to choose, reject, or neglect anything that comes to us. But the primary function of the conscious mind is to focus and choose. And that's where we get to direct energy. But most people are not directing their energy because they don't know that they have the power to do that. But our biggest power is our ability to choose. So how do we choose? We've got to study. We've got to learn. We've got to get information that is new, and can stir up inside of us questions. And then the physical plane is when we learn through the body, and so thoughts on the conscious level are leading to the subconscious level, where we interpret thoughts into a feeling place. So we interpret language in pictures. So if I say to you, red truck, what do you see?
Right.
Right?
So I see a 57 Ford red truck.
Right. You're not seeing RED.
Right.
If I say, do you open up your refrigerator from the right to the left to the right, or in between, what do you see?
Yeah.
Right. So you go into your kitchen. We interpret language into imagery, and imagery causes emotion. And that's the subconscious level. So whatever the conscious mind is feeding and accepting, the subconscious mind does not have the ability to reject. So it's perceiving everything as real and imaginary. So that's why even with anxiety and fear, people will feel the fear, and there's no real reason, right? It's that false evidence appearing real. There's no reason to feel the fear. They're creating it in the mind, and the mind is accepting it as the truth and dropping it into subconscious mind, right? Which is the emotional plane. That's the physical plane. When we create that feeling, we're creating a vibration in the body, and that vibration needs to be expressed. So often it's expressed, and through our feelings and the gamut of feelings, right? And that's what causes our behavior. So we're either, again, seeking pleasure, or we're avoiding pain.
Right.
Either way you look at it, it's based in our emotional mind. And so that physical level is where we're expressing and creating results, so that eventually, if we keep on believing over and over and over again, a certain belief, whether it's positive or negative, eventually it's going to, what I call, cross the border and show up in the outer reality.
Yeah. The choice is one, as you mentioned it in the book I wrote. I actually kind of created a word called choiceability. And I just said it was this unique feature that we humans have, is this choiceability. We really have this ability to choose. And it's exciting if you're using it to your advantage, and it's not if you're not. But choice, and I love hearing you talk about that. Man, I think you and I could talk for hours. Our alignment here is very high. One question I ask the guests is around, if you wanted people to walk away with one thought, one concept, one principle they could use from this half an hour together today, what would you say is that one thing?
I would say that it's really about self-image. You'll never outperform your self-image. You'll never outperform what you already know. And in order to grow, it's about doing things outside your comfort zone, doing things differently. Highly successful people are constantly outside their comfort zone. And in my program, I work with what's called a stretch goal, a worthy ideal, as Earl Nightingale would put it, so that you go after something you don't know how to do. It scares you and excites you, but you really must want it. Really want it. And I worked with a 72-year-old woman who wanted to lose weight. And I said, that's not a stretch goal. It's not something that, because when you go after something you don't know how to do, let's say climb Mount Everest, you're going to find parts of yourself that you haven't yet met. And I like to say to people, you probably don't know who you really are, and you never will until you discover those parts that you haven't yet met.
Right.
So how do you do that? You've got to do something differently and make sure that it excites you at the same time, that it scares you. And you'll discover along the way how to do it. Stay out of the how. You'll discover who you're becoming along the way. And I like to tell people, you must pretend. To act as if is really about, can you think the thoughts? So say like who is the person who's climbed to the top of Mount Everest? What are the thoughts that they're thinking? What are the feelings that they're experiencing? What are their actions? And if you can start to live those in your daily life now, because subconscious doesn't know the difference between the past, the present, or the future. And you start being it now, playing it, put on the role, put on the character. What are the clothes that this character, write out the character and become it, and start to, and if you want to be an extremely wealthy person, start in incremental steps. Maybe buy a Gucci handbag. It's not like you have to go and, buy a trip to Bora Bora right off the bat. Start raising the frequency, because what's really going on is that the dream is up here and you're at a frequency level that doesn't match that dream. And in order to increase that frequency, it's really to be in the question of, who are you being now? And as you implement the next step and the next idea and the next growth spurt, what's the beauty of it is that the vision, the dream, starts to come to you as you're moving toward it. And that's where it becomes very magical.
Yeah. The next question is around cauliflower moment. And of all of my guests I've talked to so far, I'm actually most excited to hear yours, because you have dove into this limiting beliefs and all of the science around what causes us to form them, be stuck in them, and how to break free from them. So I know in there that you've had beliefs that you were attached to, that you've had to realize you changed. So I'm curious to see what you highlight as your cauliflower moment for everybody.
Okay, you might be surprised, but um, it really, because I lived my life for 30 years seeking approval outside myself and not understanding that I could design my own life, the cauliflower moment for me to get me on the path to self-discovery, let's say, was after I lost my husband 3 months afterward. I went to Sedona, and I was part of something called Sedona Soul Adventures, where this woman intuited who I needed to see, where I needed to go, from Ayurvedic medicine to astrologers to mediums, right? And she put me with this woman. And remember, I was a director for many years, so I had in my core a lot of judgment.
Right.
As a matter of fact, when I was in college, my directing teachers told me I wasn't critical enough. So I worked at being critical. I worked at, really trying to be judgmental. It wasn't my nature. But I went to this woman's house, and immediately I judged, because I don't eat hot dogs. I haven't eaten hot dogs since I was in my 20s. And she was steaming hot dogs, and the smell in the house was of these steamies, right? And she was steaming for her 10-year-old son. And I immediately went, oh, and I'm not going to get much here, is where I started. And then she, put me on a massage table, and she took me on a journey. And it was a hypnotic, transcendental type of journey where she led me through a forest, and I was like playing with Peter. In my mind, I was concocting all these ideas of I was free falling in the sky. I was playing with Peter Pan. I was like in a canoe and laughing with people. And I didn't even like canoeing. I was hiking up mountains, and I was like, she didn't even tell me these things. This is just what was coming from somewhere inside of me. Right. And it's like, I don't enjoy hiking. I'm a Cosmo kind of gal. I was like, why am I, even imagining all of this? And then about a half an hour into the session, she said to me, so what's the purpose of your life? And I said, oh dear, I don't know, because I was angry. I thought I shut down my acting academy. I shut down my private practice. I shut down my directing career. I shut it all down. And I didn't know what was next. And I started thinking, I don't know, realtor, maybe I'll be a property manager, maybe I'll be, I'm not going to be an acting teacher anymore. I had no, I could, my lips were tightly shut, And then she said it again, what's the purpose of your life? And out of my mouth blurted, love. And she said, thank you, that's the end of the session for today. And I was furious. I laid there, and I was like, how am I going to make a living on love? How am I going to survive on love? How am I, how am I going to pay the bills on love? And then she let me, stay there for about another 20 minutes or so. And I started fantasizing being part of a healing center, taking people on canoe trips and hiking and laughing and doing pottery, all kinds of things. And about 3 weeks after that, a hypnotherapist that I was working with came to me and said, Barbara, I'd like you to create an art studio at my healing center.
Wow.
And I was like, that's interesting. And then I wasn't, tempted until she said, and I'd like to name the studio after your late husband. And within 3 weeks of that, I had created an art studio called the Sunflower Art Studio because he loved sunflowers. And that opened up the journey to living my life more by design, coming from a place of self-love and truth.
Wow, that's great. Living life by design is powerful.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, listen, this has been a blast. How can people connect with you outside of this and reach out?
They can always go to my website at www.barbara.daoust, and that's DAOUST.thinkingintoresults.com. That's a group coaching program that I offer, as well as my email, barbara@barbaradoust.com. I also have a brainwave entrainment program at www.vibrantresults.com. And that's where I work with the cardiologist, doctor, where we induce bypassing the conscious mind. So, and we get to unconscious levels, which we didn't talk about today, which is a deeper experience. And then, they can always go to my calendly.com/Barbara-64 if they want to book a discovery session. I offer a 30-minute bonus discovery session where people can talk to me about their goals and whether or not I'm a good fit to help them get there.
Well, great. Well, we'll include all those in the show notes as well. And I think we're going to have another session because I definitely would like to talk further and talk about the unconscious as well, because there's a lot to unfold there.
Yeah. And one more thing I forgot to mention, with that 72-year-old woman who wanted to lose weight, the stretch goal that I got her into was that she signed up for a bodybuilding competition.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then she was in the gym at 5 o'clock every morning, and she can do a plank longer than her trainer now. The woman is really tough.
Well, that's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for your time. And it's great
welcome.
Getting to know you.
Thank you for inviting me, Dan. It's a pleasure.